Is Jahoda healing enough to not feel bad running Farina? Yeah. Jahoda healing is very good. Is Jahoda a good 4-star or is it another whatever character? She's weird. She's weird. She's weird as fuck, man. Like, she has a lot of potential, but sometimes she's kind of potential woman. Meh, I wouldn't say that. Because, like, the whole thing with, like, potential man is, like, it's a character that has the ability to do really well, but just doesn't in practice, right? That's why people call Milani potential woman. That's not gonna be the case with Jahoda. The thing with Jahoda is, like, there's some situations where she can be really good, but some situations where she can be really fucking worthless. Honestly, I think Xianyun is a pretty good comparison. That's actually kind of a good one, yeah. Like, if you meet a very specific set of criteria, she can be really useful to have for your account, but for most people, she doesn't do much. I think that's a good way to think about her. Although, the fact that we have an Animo healer that isn't complete garbage like Sayu as a 4-star is really nice. That's really nice as, like, in terms of accessibility for Animo healing. Better than Jean. She's kind of similar to Jean, I'd say, when you're using her in a role where you'd use Jean. Anyways, let's do a few calcs on her. Nefer. No, she's dog shit with Nefer. Do not use her with Nefer. Please, I am begging you. Do not use her with Nefer. I guess if you really need a healer, you can use her as the last slot, but she's not better than Kuki, so don't bother. Okay, so we'll do Flins, Nefer, Jahoda, Aino. What bow do we give Jahoda here? Probably Fab, right? What if we just do Farina instead? Farina's gonna be cringe as fuck, though, because 18-second rotations start to have a problem with Farina uptime at the end of the second one. Could Sac make our rotation shorter? No, because the burst is still 18 seconds. Just put the Xingqiu in the bag. You're right. You're right. Sky, Vivi. Why Xingqiu over Aino? They're very similar in the slot, but Xingqiu just feels way better to play because you're not circle impacted. I know it'll be better when you're using Sucrose, but with Flins, Nefer, Jahoda, you don't have anyone capitalizing on the Ascendant Gleam bonus, so the gap between Aino and the other ones is significantly reduced, and you'll need to have C6 Aino for it to be better than Xingqiu, and most people don't. And even if you do, it's a very small difference, and Xingqiu is gonna feel better to play. This is probably TOM, right? TOM Noblesse. Oh yeah, we do need Serenade, I forgot. I guess it'll be TOM Serenade. Okay, does this team use Nefer burst every rotation? I don't know if you can, because Jahoda field time is so fucking long. So it's gonna increase Flins ER requirements, and you're gonna have to go Fabi Nefer. I guess that's fine though, because otherwise Flins ER requirements are gonna be a little bit annoying, because we spend a lot less time on him. Well, I guess we spend more time on him if we didn't burst on Nefer, but I don't know. We'll burst every other rotation, whatever. Yeah, maybe you go HP Xingqiu instead to max out that bonus. I don't know, because he only bursts every other rotation, so his damage is kind of pathetic. Is this Jahoda C6? For now, yes. So this is Jahoda C0, because I didn't put the crit from Jahoda C6 yet. That's so fucking pathetic. All right, so this is personal damage with Jahoda C6. We can also just take a look at personal damage with a few other things. Oh, I didn't include the Nefer EM buff here. So in terms of Flynn's personal damage, Jahoda C6 is worse than Sucrose because Jahoda extends your rotation. So the main thing that Jahoda provides over Sucrose in these teams is that she's not just buffing Flins, she's buffing Flins and Nefer. So at C6, it'll probably be a little bit better because you're buffing Nefer damage too. She has personal damage as well. I guess, yeah, but like, it's not a lot in these teams. She's really starved for damage percent in her kit. She doesn't have any damage percent. Her cons don't give her any damage percent. If she has VV, the 2-piece isn't even affecting the majority of her damage. A good portion of the buffs she receives are EM buff, not attack buffs, and she doesn't care about EM in these teams. What's her ascension stat? We don't talk about this, man. Please, let's not talk about that. Please, let's not talk about that. If we're doing Jahoda, can't we use damage percent Farina to get damage percent instead of Xingqiu? We could. That extends our rotation even more though. That might be worth it though. It's gonna be very similar, and it's like that uptime on Farina's skill. No, at that point it would be a 20-second rotation, so you'd have full uptime on Farina's skill. You just use it every rotation, which leaves for personal damage at 37k with Jahoda. Alright, this is what I'm talking about. The main thing that Jahoda provides to these Flins teams is Nefer damage compared to other characters. Jahoda herself, so we're at around 106 here with these assumptions. This is T0 Jahoda. I think it's very possible that at C0, you're better off not bursting every rotation, but I don't think it's going to be a big change, so whatever. We can now take a look at Sucrose with these same assumptions. I'm not posting these calcs anywhere, so it's fine if I take a bunch of shortcuts. And we look at Aino C6 with an additional 35 here, right, around 102. If I'm more thorough in my assumptions, it'll be like 2-ish K higher probably. I took a bunch of shortcuts here, a little slightly lower things. But this makes sense where where Jahoda C6 will be slightly better than Sucrose, but non-C6 will just be worse. With Columbina, I can see it being a lot better. I don't know about that, because you don't have anyone activating the Ascendant Gleam bonus if you go Jahoda Columbina. And keep in mind, Jahoda's crit applies to all fielders, but the EM doesn't. Do you have Nod Krai resonance effect added? I do. Fucking, I approximated it to 20%, and I didn't change it based on the team. It would be a little bit higher with Sucrose and a little bit lower with Xingqiu, but like, I don't care. It's not that big either way. Well, it's not insignificant, but it's not a massive deal. But yeah, this does fit with my initial thoughts on Jahoda, where like Jahoda at C6 is a minor upgrade that does give you some healing, which is nice. But Jahoda outside of C6 is just a downgrade to Sucrose. And because Nefer gives you defensive utility and your Hydro slot isn't that good anyways, so if you want healing, you can just put a healer on your Hydro slot. I feel like Jahoda doesn't have a lot of value for Flins. Is she the best non-Nefer team? At C6, probably by a little bit, but not by much. At C0, fuck no. That's the biggest problem. It's like, she's kind of like Aino, where she just doesn't do that much without cons. So much of her value is the C6, and a lot of her value is in the C1 as well. But unlike Aino, we already have alternatives to her in the slot, right? She's better than Aino, but there's also more competition in the slot for her. Isn't Flynn supposed to be 110? We can go a little bit more damage by going for a different weapon on Flynn's. I'm using Shovel instead of a Battle Pass weapon, but honestly, it's so cringe not overcapping crit on Deathmatch on Flynn's, man. I just can't be bothered. I'll just assume Shovel, whatever. For Flynn's list Unitars, you should be worse than Aino Fischl Sucrose with witch buffs. Like, assuming you're using Fischl, I think Jahoda C6 plus Mona C4 will be better than Sucrose plus Aino C6, but it won't be that much better. Is Jahoda C6 better than Sucrose C6 for Flynn's? Barely. Yeah. Man, the fact that Jahoda can't get absorption from element applied to your character is so sad. Because she would be so much better if you could absorb Pyro from being in Bennett buff, because you'd get to have reliable vape setups that don't need you to have Pyro as an aura on the enemy for like 30 seconds. But as it stands, it's going to be kind of hard to play the Pyro Jahoda teams, because you infuse her with Pyro. Like, in order to infuse her with Pyro, you need to have Pyro aura on the enemies, which means you need to have no other element going, which is really cringe for setups. You look at like overvape teams, for example. If Nefer's Electro is still going, it'll take you like 8 seconds to properly like fill up your flask with Pyro, because your aura won't stay on the enemy for the whole time. It'll get overloaded away here and there, and it's gonna be really rough. And like a lot of my early Jahoda calcs that used her as a power damage with Durin, kind of I think we're too optimistic for assumptions on aura. I think it'll be really difficult to properly get a pyro absorption in teams with Nefer. If you could get it reliably, it'll be really good, but I don't think you can. Like, you'll have to wait out Nefer uptime, right? So it forces your rotations to be like 24 seconds, because you need Nefer uptime to be over when you swap to Jahoda, and then Jahoda is like 4 seconds, and then you have to swap back to Nefer. So you're like at least 24-second rotations, which is a little confused why you're using Xingqiu over Yelan. Because of rotation length mainly. In the teams that have Jahoda, Yelan's longer animations increase your minimum rotation length. In teams that don't have Jahoda, Yelan's longer cooldown increase the minimum rotation length as well. Longer animations when you have long animation characters like Jahoda means that you just need more time to do all the things you need to do. And when you're using characters with short animations like Sucrose, the fact that she has an 18-second cooldown on burst, whereas everyone else is 16, forces you to do rotations that are 2 seconds longer. It's not necessarily bad. It'll be actually very similar, but you can use either. Like, it's really not the end of the world. And assuming Yelan when Xingqiu is basically the same is not something I want to do, right? Because it's basically the same. Is Farina similar to Yelan here? Yeah, pretty similar. I want to look at damage Jahoda again, now that I have a better idea of like what the rotations are going to look like, and the rotations are going to look like hot garbage, right? Like, God, it's going to feel so bad. Because you need to have Pyro going, so you need to Durin burst first, then you need to go to Jahoda, spend like 4 seconds on her, get the absorption, then you need to swap to Nefer. Otherwise, if you do something before Nefer, by the time you swap to Nefer or to Jahoda in the next rotation, Nefer is still going to be going, so you need to swap to Nefer at that point. But that means that if you swap to Mona after that, it's already been like 8 seconds since your Durin burst, and so by the time you start vaping Durin, he's already used up all of his like 10 stacks of damage. Oh, dude, that's gonna be so pathetic. Holy fuck. Or that's something I hadn't properly considered initially. And like, you can't make it work without Nefer. You could try to do like Fischl Aino, I guess, but Aino's so dog shit, I just don't see that being a real thing. Plus, well, I guess if you do one Fischl E, it would work, right? But Aino isn't enough Hydro app to actually get vapes on all your vapable stuff from Jahoda plus Durin. So That doesn't even fucking work, man. But like, I mean, we can try to think about it a little bit, right? So you do Jahoda, Durin, Nefer, Mona. And your rotation would be Durin, E, Q, Jahoda, E, fall asleep, Q if you have the energy for it, Nefer, EQ, Mona. What sort of combo do you do on Mona here? You probably just EQ, right? Can Durin not use Q at the start? Like swap back to Durin for the second time after Jahoda stuff? Nefer duration is 20 seconds, and the duration starts after the burst animation. So the duration in practice is more than 20 seconds, right? Unless you just don't burst, like 21 to 22 seconds. And as long as Nefer is still going, it'll be a nightmare to get your pyro absorption on your Jahoda bottle. Which means the more time you wait between Jahoda's skill and Nefer swap, the more you delay your next rotation. I don't think you can ever do something other than Jahoda into Nefer. Maybe you like Durin EE. As long as Nefer is over, you can Durin EE into Jahoda from the Durin stuff, then Nefer EQ, then Durin Q, then Mona. That might work, but the problem with that is you need Nefer to be over before Durin EE for that, and Nefer is like 22-ish seconds, so then Durin EE is another like second and a half, and then Jahoda E is another like 3 seconds, so you're already at like a 26+ second rotation. Whereas at least with Durin, as long as Nefer expires before you start caring about having pyro on Jahoda, like even if Nefer is still hitting when Durin is on field, it's not a problem, right? So basically, if you do Durin EE then Jahoda, you get to have more of Durin's hits buffed by Mona, but you end up with much longer rotations. Durin Q still going next rotation? Maybe? All right, if you Jahoda EQ, it starts at time 0-ish, then Nefer EQ, or I guess you would Durin EE at 0, then Jahoda EQ at like 2, Nefer EQ at like 4, no, sorry, at like 5. You probably don't Jahoda Q here. You probably Jahoda Q later if you need to, but you don't need to Q here because this rotation doesn't have strict rotations, and if you're going to Q at any time, you'd rather Q at a time that isn't between Jahoda E and Nefer E. Anyway, so this starts at 5, which means it'll keep going until like around 27, right? Because it's 20-second duration, but it gets refreshed by the burst. Actually, when does the timer for burst refresh start? I need to take a look. I want to see when the last hit happens when I do Nefer EQ. Oh! If you EQ, Brigitte ends up disappearing right before it tries to do a hit. Interesting. That's actually good. So 26-ish is when it'll be over. What if we just E at 20? When does the last hit happen? I think it'll be at like 19 seconds later, right? At 01? No, it's 20 seconds. Okay, that's fine then. We could shorten our rotation by about 1.5-ish seconds by skipping Nefer burst. I don't think that's worth it. Do we do Durin now or Mona first? Thoughts, chat? Mona or Durin first? Does it even fucking matter? I guess it should be Mona first if we want Durin to last for a little bit longer into our next setup. Mona EQ, it's gonna start at around like 8, 7.5-ish. Then Durin Q will start at around 10, which means it'll still be going. It'll still be going no problem at this. So we could probably do this, yeah. This is probably the rotation we're gonna do here, I think. Then Mona NA spam, that starts at like 12. Then Mona E refresh at 19.5. Anything else we want to refresh? No, I don't think so. And then we go back to Durin EE, or Mona NA spam again at 20, and then Durin EE needs to happen after Mona skill is over, right? Ideally, about 25, I think, is fine. So this would be a 25-second rotation. Jahoda E would keep going until about 24. Durin burst will keep going until around 30, right? Then you would Jahoda E again at 27, Nefer EQ again at 30, right? It would be something like this. This rotation looks good, yeah. That seems solid. This is also a rotation that can give TTDS to Durin for his big uptime, which is really nice, actually. If we want to go TTDS, maybe Fab is still better, but I guess this team is not that energy hungry, right? You get 2 Mona E's, so Mona burst won't be a problem. Yeah, I think this is what we do here. It's a long rotation that only does 1 Mona burst, so her ER requirements aren't a problem. Jahoda's burst sucks, so you don't care. Durin doesn't really have ER requirements, so it's only Nefer, but the burst is honestly optional anyways, so it's fine. This is a team where there's so much going on at the same time. Plus, there's RNG involved with Jahoda C1 procs. He's gonna be a pain in the ass to calc. It might be even worse than Chaska teams to calc. Oh god. Hey, it's fine. Is this Durin in dark mode or white mode? This is dark mode Durin. Jahoda will, if you want to go VV, you don't get any uptime on the VV on Jahoda. And Jahoda does a good amount of personal damage if you build her for damage in this team. So you go Durin on the shred mode, Jahoda full damage. Yeah. Oh, I'm an idiot. I meant white mode. I'm sorry. White mode is the shred mode. I'm a fucking idiot. My bad. What weapon should we give her in this team? I think it's a stringless hanger. angle over event weapon. But this team doesn't get a lot of attack. So it might be an attack goblet with stringless angle. Right, let's think about this set. So we have Golden Troop here. We definitely have someone on Serenade. What else? All right, like we want Serenade on someone. We probably want TOM. Is the last one just gonna be Noblesse, I guess? But Noblesse is really bad uptime in this team. I guess if you Noblesse Mona, it at least affects the larger portion of your damage. If I wanted to be thorough, I'd need to have double the amount of lines because Jahoda doesn't snapshot the attack buffs, but I can't be bothered. I'll just average it to 50% uptime. Scroll Durin. I don't know. There's a good amount of your damage that isn't getting buffed by damage percent. So I don't know if Scroll is good enough. And TOM won't have great uptime on like Mona. Serenade too. So I think you want to go TOM Nefer, Serenade, Durin, Noblesse Mona. Or maybe it's Instructor over Noblesse. No, I don't think so. I think it's Noblesse. And then weapons, probably have Stringless Jahoda. Durin, weapon. Wonder if this is an Iron Sting team. Maybe, maybe not. For now, what weapon should we look at? Just Wolffang for now, which brings Jahoda's personal DPS in this team to 32k. Now we look at the rest. Also, let me just double check. All right, this is with attack goblet. Is it better than with damage goblet? I think it is, but I'll just double check. Yeah. All right, which brings Nefer personal damage at also around 32k. That's a lot of 32ks, huh? that is three. All three characters so far have their damage at 32k plus or minus 1k. But before looking at Mona personal damage, which won't be that high, but won't be nothing here either because she's getting some lunar charge on her shit. We're at 96k here. When people ask who's the carry in this team, you just say yeah, pretty much. Did I not add? I didn't add the 50 CV to Nefer from Jahoda. My bad. Nefer was not a 32k merchant. She was a 38k merchant. Oh my bad. So she should be present. I know. Present. All right. This isn't bad actually. The thing is, I really don't know if I'm being too optimistic for my assumptions on the way that reactions are going to line up with this rotation. Does Jahoda C6 change anything? In this team, it changes a lot. Now, is Jahoda C6 a better pyro carry than Arlecchino? Right. Yeah. I mean, maybe. Probably. No, but the thing is, like, right, this is Jahoda C6. Let's take a look at Jahoda C5, right? Minus 10k team DPS. Let's take a look at Jahoda C0. Minus another 10k team DPS. What set is Jahoda using? This is Golden Troop Jahoda. Not that bad for a C0 4-star. The thing is, we're still looking at Mona C4, right? And Mona C4 is doing a lot of the work here. I'm pretty sure Jahoda is worse than Xiangling here. But I guess Xiangling isn't a healer. So I guess it's fine. I don't know. It's also like, this is a Durin Nefer team, right? Like, this isn't a 4-star carry. This is a cosmetic 4-star in a team where most of the damage is coming from off-field Durin and Nefer, right? She's not actually doing anything. At least at high con, she has good personal damage and a good buff for Nefer. Technically, I didn't include the 100 EM buff to Mona, right? Team DPS goes from 108k to 108k. Thank God. Thank God I added that. I'm pretty sure, actually, that if you're gonna have a non-Jahoda C6 team with these characters, your best bet is to put Nefer on the Sky set and quick swap Mona Nefer instead of bringing Jahoda. Honestly, maybe you could do that in this team, too. Maybe there's a world where you can, but I don't know. Seems a bit optimistic in this one. You need the extra Hydro app from Mona because Jahoda plays some Pyro, too. We can also take a look at T6 Mona here. It shouldn't be that big of a deal, though. All right, we're at 108k. I'm not even gonna make a new thing. I'll just change it and then Control Z, right? Because it's just plus 180% here and then times 2 here. It goes up by like 8k. Not that big of a deal. And this C0 team is VV better. The problem with VV is you have really bad uptime on it. Jahoda applies Animo twice per rotation. All right, so you can't really go and refresh it. You're also not getting a Pyro Aura back without losing reactions. So it's kind of ass. Yeah, like Jahoda, like she has a lot of teams that are good. It's just, I don't think she's ever gonna feel like she's important to those teams. Maybe we should take a look at some Sucrose instead of Jahoda in this slot as well. Just go Sucrose to like hyper buff Nefer damage, do shorter rotations. I don't think it'll be better than this one, but it's probably better than the C0 Jahoda stuff. What about some other Jahoda? Like, what other team could you use Jahoda in? Is there ever like a mono team that uses Jahoda? Like Mono Pyro or something with Jahoda? I don't know, probably not. In order to get any value out of Jahoda, you need Ascendant Gleam, and Ascendant Gleam teams are generally reaction teams, so you're probably never putting her in a mono team. I remember I did a little bit of that a while back, but I kind of want to look at it again. What sort of teams can you make when you force yourself to bring Jahoda Aino so that you can get Ascendant Gleam without needing a Nod Krai 5-star? Arlecchino? I don't know about that. Like, what sort of Arlecchino team would you be doing? Like, if you do Arlecchino here, what's the slot that goes here? Like Bennett? The problem is that a team like this can't go VV Jahoda, because in order for her to get Pyro Shred on VV, she needs to be also absorbing Pyro pyro on her bottle, right? So I don't know if bringing a character that's only there to buff Arlecchino damage is gonna do that much. Just use Arlecchino E for pyro, but if you do that, then you pyro absorb on Jahoda, and now you're applying too much pyro for Aino to keep up by herself. Like, that's the problem with VV Jahoda in general, is that the element she swirls is generally also the element she's absorbing. You could just do no absorption Jahoda, but like, that's kind of cooked too, right? So yeah, I guess you'd probably just do Fischl, right? Just give up on having relevant swirl stuff. Use Jahoda so that you don't lose any vapes from this, right? And use Hydro Absorbed Jahoda just for a little bit more personal damage. But like, at C0 Jahoda, that personal damage is gonna be pathetic. So I don't see this team being very good. I guess you could just do Hyper Bloom, right? But that also sounds omega cooked. You gotta get your Hydro Absorption from Jahoda if you want to have like any sort of the Hyper Bloom uptime, because like a Hyper Bloom or Bloom generation, because Aino's Hydro is really slow, and that just sounds cooked as hell. I mean, I guess you could get it if your Dendro is like Kole or some shit, right? For people that don't have Nahida or Llama, it might be a fine 4-star only team, actually. It probably is a fine 4-star only team for when you need Ascendant Gleam, but it's not going to be a very good team. How bad would Gaming be here if you just don't try to absorb anything on Jahoda? Just use her for VV, something like this. We can look at like Aino C1, Jahoda C0, maybe. Gaming C6, Bennett C6 for now. Oh, that looks disgusting though. That looks fucking disgusting. Although one nice thing about a team like this is you get to actually juggle properly. And if you're not good at juggling, you get to do some Gaming normal attacks that add a little bit of damage. Start of Gaming's rotation will kill your Hydro Aura if you don't Hydro Bottle Infuse. You're not trying to Hydro Bottle Infuse, but no, you'll be fine with Hydro Aura. Your Pyro application is really slow in this team. You only have Gaming applying Pyro, so you're not gonna struggle. This also assumes that enemies don't move out of Bennett Q. That's almost never happening with modern enemies. Not really. Staying in Bennett Q with Gaming generally isn't that big of a problem, because you can just walk back into it. Bennett burst buff lingers long enough for Gaming to have time to E from inside Bennett burst to outside of it without losing the buff. Aino's AoE is going to be much more of a problem than Bennett's. And that's something you'll know if you've ever played Gaming Rosaria teams. It's not the Bennett buff AoE that's the problem. It's the Rosaria burst AoE that's the problem. One nice thing here is you get to go Serenade, right? You go Serenade, you go VV, you go probably Noblesse, right? Sapwoods, Fav. You can do some funky rotations to get to be able to swap from Jahoda to Gaming, but I don't know if it's worth it. It sounds like kind of a pain in the ass. You probably just do like Bennett, EQ, Jahoda, Aino. It's pretty bad for uptime, but like, meh, it's not that bad. To be able to get 5 Bennett buff plunges, no, 4 Bennett buff plunges, 1 non-Bennett buff probably. So like 5 E total, 3 Bennett, 4 Bennett, 3 VV, kinda, with something like this in a like 18-ish second rotation. Personal DPS at about 50k. Yeah, that's not very good, huh? Oh man, that's not very good. The rest of the team does pathetic damage. It's not gonna be above 60, I think. Oh man. But maybe I'm being too pessimistic with only 5 plunges. Like, you could definitely get more in 18 seconds. Or at least some normals in between the plunges. But yeah, energy is cooked. Nah, you have double Fav in this team. It's fine. 5 plunges is quite low. It is, yeah. Like, there's definitely a world where you get up to like 7 plunges. And if we get 2 more, the team does get to around 70k. But I'll need to test it properly to be sure how many you can get and how long the rotations take. Still ass. I mean, yeah, you're forcing yourself to play Aino in a non-Nod Krai team, right? But like, this will be better against the Wild Hunt enemies than trying to brute force with something, right? Way better, right? And like, that's the point right now. That's what we're trying to do. Man, it seems a little sus though, honestly. I'm not convinced. What if we did a Bloom Neville? Hear me out. No, I don't know about that. I think that's too much. I think you're just kind of cooked. Luma's in no Nilo. Yeah. Nah, I think you're just cooked as hell, honestly. Electro charge, but that's gonna suck too. Like, Taser's not that strong without Nefer to begin with. And if on top of that, you're forcing yourself to play dog shit units like Aino, you're just nerfing yourself even more. I think this is the problem. Aino's just too bad for the Jahoda Aino core to be all that appealing when you want Nod Krai stuff. It functions, but it won't be that good. Official Mona, you can, but like, all of that EM is going towards electrocharge damage. That's it, which is like, Varesa Yonsan 70k here, probably, maybe more, not sure. I'll think about it. I can look at it. So I guess we can take a look at Varesa. What about Molani? Like, no burst Aino? No burst Aino, no VV Animo unit? That sounds really bad. Because again, Jahoda can't VV and absorb. When she VVs and absorbs, those are the same elements. So if she VVs Hydro, she's absorbing Hydro. And that's not gonna work. 30k on a team. It's probably like 50k, 40k, something like that. Because you're effectively playing solo Molani, right? But with vape. No shred, no nothing. Just vape. Okay, so yeah, let's take a look at Varesa, Yelan, Jahoda, Aino. Can't you charge attack to VV? Charge attack to VV Hydro, then apply Pyro, then Jahoda hold E to absorb Pyro, then swap to Molani. I'm pretty sure VV expires before your first jump. So that won't quite work. Yeah. Anyways, this is definitely a team that does the full thing on Varesa, which brings us to about 70k. That makes sense to me. Full team DPS will be at like 75 to 80k because I didn't include any of the electrocharge stuff and their personal damage on top of that. It'll be around that. That's with C6 Yelan, Varesa with Yelan C6, Yelan C2, Yelan C0, right? And that's around 56k. Yelan C0, 2k. So yeah, if you're trying to force Ascendant Gleam stuff with Varesa, you'll end up at like 75 to 80k team DPS, minus 10k if you don't have C6 Yelan, minus another 5k-ish you don't have C2 either. This will probably clear Wild Hunt enemies faster than Varesa's best teams, but probably not Sigurd. I don't think this will be better against Sigurd than her best teams. I think it'll only be better against Wild Hunt enemies that you can start putting in their like hunting state or whatever on the first health bar. Otherwise, it'll be worse. What are we calcing? We're looking at bullshit non-Nod Krai teams when you force them into Ascendant Gleam with Jahoda plus Aino for people who don't have Nod Krai characters that want to have teams that can deal with Wild Hunt enemies with the Ascendant Gleam stuff. And it doesn't look great, honestly. It does not look great at all. The team DPS gets multiplied by 1.5 against Wild Hunt enemies. It's like times 3 against Wild Hunt enemies, right? So this is like 200k DPS equivalent against Wild Hunt enemies. But Sigurd's first health bar is effectively not a Wild Hunt enemy, right? So you need to deal with Sigurd's first health bar at 67k DPS, and then you have 200k DPS for the second one. I'm pretty sure that's going to be slower than 120k DPS for the whole thing, because the first health bar is going to take you so long to kill at this amount of DPS, right? Sigurd in Fearless has what, 3.3 million, right? So first health bar would take this. I don't know. Depends on breakpoints, I guess, but yeah. Anyways.
Goose on the loose.
Yeah.
Goose on the loose.
Goose on the loose.